Okay. So I'm going to move on to the David thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lauren Conlon has been doing amazing reporting on this. So I'm going to read a text thread between David and Celeste
Oh.
when he's 19 and she's 13. June 19th, 2024. Celeste, your mom knows we had sex yet. And David says, she thinks that's the first thing we gonna do when we see each other. And then more. They talk about more referring to their abortion. August 30th, 2024. Celeste, realistically, I care about you. I killed my kid first, you. And then David said, it has to be the right time with the least complications. Celeste said, I still would have been there for it. David said, yeah, selfishly because it would have also been mine. Celeste said, David, I'm going to have to lie to people around me, even my kid, for the rest of my life. Celeste said, I don't like talking about it because it gets me really upset, but I'd do it again. We're talking about the abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's
like
wild.
there are a lot of texts, so many. I don't want to read anymore. I mean, it's just confirming. It's sad. It's just confirming like he was doing something extremely illegal with this kid. So
yeah, dude, and reprehensible morally.
So do you remember when like early on in the investigation before David was arrested, there was a private investigator that the owner of the home and I saw him talk on a couple shows. He's on Joel Waldman's show, Surviving the Survivor.
Right.
Great show. He's on there a lot. And he talked to Brian Enton quite a few times. Really interesting. And he found inside like a chainsaw and the burn cage and like other evidence that I guess the police weren't taking, and called them up and was basically like, hey, do you want this stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he does a new interview and he's being treated really poorly.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, really, really poorly. So by the prosecutor. I mean, you should be nice. He's helped you.
Yeah.
Anyway, here is that. It looks like it's not that long. It's only going to be about 15 minutes.
I'm just curious from a technical side to see how
Can you hear that okay?
handle that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about handling things, Steve Fischer handled it really well. But Steve Fischer was in the courtroom when this pit bull of a DA, Beth Silverman, says to the judge, I want that guy out of there, pointing to Steve Fischer. Steve, what happened? When did this happen? Yesterday?
No, this was this morning. Yeah, so I think of a little bit of backstory, otherwise it will make sense. But
please.
This crime was discovered back in September of 2025, and I was hired by the homeowner where David was living and the Tesla was parking, and then possibly that this crime happened at. And there was little to no movement on this case for a very long time. We found evidence at the house, like we found an SD card from a camera that, he had left behind. We recovered all the photos, a burn cage, a chainsaw that had not been taken during a search warrant. The house directly across the street had a 4 terabyte hard drive surveillance system that LAPD never came back and retrieved. They said they were going to, and the homeowners were like, it's going to overwrite like tomorrow. So we took it. So we got vocal, but we were like, they wouldn't talk to us privately. They were just like, leave a message. And so we got vocal. The homeowner was like, we need to change the mission from, finding out like why this guy was in my house, because he didn't lease the house to David. He leased it to Josh Marshall. And he's like, I have no idea who this David is. Now all of a sudden my house is wrapped up in this murder. So he's like, but we need to change the mission from finding out like who he is to like making sure that nothing falls through cracks, like in this girl like gets justice, because it doesn't seem like a whole hell of a lot is happening. And so we pressed, and we put stuff out there as we felt.
I just want to say really quick, like how awesome it is that the owner took it upon himself to hire a private investigator to make sure like everything was okay.
Yeah.
He just said to make sure that this helped to make sure this girl gets justice and nothing was missed. I mean, he had to pay a lot of money to do that, and he didn't have to.
No, he didn't have to do anything at all. He could have just turned the other cheek.
Right. And just let the police handle it where they missed all this evidence. You know, have a private investigator come in and give it a thorough look.
Well, isn't the owner the one that called out the whole thing to begin with?
I don't think so. What do you mean called out the whole thing?
Because of the car that was there.
No, I think a neighbor called and had it towed.
Oh, okay. All right.
We needed for it to get traction, and it finally did, you know, and Beth Silverman, the DA, did not like the fact that we disclosed that there was evidence left behind that we thought was important, right? And she's like, you know, people don't need to know that, whatever. So she didn't like the fact that I was doing interviews. So all of a sudden, and I'm just disclosing this now because she brought it up in court today. So she's the one who let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah.
But
well, I think she said that you were a witness the way I read it.
That's let the cat out of the bag about that. That's why I haven't talked about the grand jury, but now she put it out on the record. So back in November, I had 6 a.m. I had 2 DA detectives show up at my door and subpoena me as a grand jury witness. And I appeared. And but what was strange about that was they immediately said, you have to call Beth Silverman right now. And I did. And she told me, now that you've been subpoenaed, you can never, ever talk about this case again to anybody, including your own client. You can never bring it up again or you're going to jail. And I was like,
you know what? I haven't seen him on any shows lately. So that makes sense. But why is she trying to silence him? Because he's making her look bad?
Yeah, that's what he said.
That's ridiculous.
She didn't like that he mentioned that they left evidence behind.
You know, I haven't dealt with grand juries and stuff like that, but I started researching the law, you know, because it was only 6:30 in the morning, so I can call attorneys that I know. And I saw, well, as a witness, the secrecy is for the grand jurors. A witness can talk about their own testimony. They can't talk about anything they've learned from a grand jury. But I was like, and so I clarified with her. I'm like, wait, you know, I have a client, like, so you can't talk about the case, period. You go to jail. And but I found out that was wrong. And I testified, and she's the one who brought it up today. And then what she did is she subpoenaed me again and said, well, you're still under subpoena now. So for 2 months from now, so can't talk about the case. And I told her. And I appeared a second time, and then the same thing happened again on the third time. And I told her, I said, I'm not going to. I said, I am talking about the case again, and I know that what you're telling me is inaccurate. And she handed me, which I put on Twitter, a handwritten note saying that I had to appear in court on Tuesday for a order to show cause hearing, for talking for talking. And I'm like, can I get a case number? She's like, there's not a case number. Just show up. I'm like, it's a handwritten note. This is not this. And she's like, you need to be there, or there'll be a warrant issued. And so I and she said, this is for contempt. And I'm like, well, can I see? Like, I need to know what I'm defending myself against on Tuesday, Friday. I'm like, you're telling me I got to be here Tuesday. And so what I did, I was supposed to leave town, and I did leave town, but I FedExed a letter to the court because she gave me it was in Division 105 or whatever, and I said, I'm not going to show up for these reasons. I have not been, I don't have a case number. It's a handwritten note. And the other thing is that I put it down on Twitter, and I said, the only way I can see I can protect myself from this possibly being thrown in jail secretly is to let the press know about it. Right. And so Tuesday came, and they did show up, and there was apparently, like, I wasn't on the docket, but there was like a courtroom that they were expecting me to possibly show up at. So, and after that, I never heard. So anyway, I have to tell that story because when and since then I've showed up at the arraignment and other stuff like that, and she's seen me in the room. I've gotten some dirty looks or whatever. Yesterday, I did not draw a ticket, but I was in the hallway outside the courtroom, and I was talking to someone, and this gentleman came up to me in a suit, and he said, Steve, I want to introduce myself. I'm Patrick Steinfeld. I'm the attorney for Celeste Rivas' family. And I was like, okay. So we stepped in the middle of the hallway, and he said, I just want to thank you for what you've done. You kept the story alive when people didn't even know you've taken some shots at the family, at the mom and dad for, he's like, I get it. And he's like, but they want to thank you too. And I was like, I asked how they were doing, because the case really has touched me. And he told me, and then all of a sudden I see Beth Silverman storming down the hallway, and she came and physically grabbed him, yanked him away from me, and said, you are not allowed to talk to him. You are not allowed to. Start yelling at him. So I was like, and she did it in front of all these reporters. I was like, what in the world is going on? So then today, I do draw a ticket to get in, and I'm seated, and they go on the record, start the case, and there's another matter before me of somebody that was live streaming or live tweeting from whatever. And then the judge says, "Is there any other matters before we call the first witness?" And Beth said, "Yes. There's a private investigator here that I want thrown out. He was a witness to the grand jury, and he failed to appear. And he failed to appear, and there's a warrant for his arrest. Both those things are completely untrue." And she goes, "And he illegally approached the witnesses, Celeste Rivas's family, out in the hallway when he knew he's not allowed to talk to any witnesses." And so the judge kind of stopped her and said, she said, "Listen, I don't, any matters of the grand jury, just stop. Don't stop talking about it." She's like, "Mr. Fisher, if you were potentially going to be called as a witness, you run a grand jury, she can use the exclusionary rule. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." She was very, very professional and kind about it. And I said, "Your Honor, I completely understand." And I started to walk away, and then Beth started talking to the bailiff. It's like, "Go back to the front of the courtroom." I went back, and she was saying something, and then I said, "Can I put something?" I said, "Your Honor, can I put something on the record?" And she's like, "If it has anything to do with the grand jury, please don't." I'm like, "No, it doesn't." I said, "But I was just accused of approaching witnesses illegally," and so I said, "I just want to make it clear," because Patrick Steinfeld was in the courtroom. I said, "He came up to me, and then she turned around I was looking at her. She turned around in her chair and looked at him and said, 'What the fuck?' And then Steinfeld stood up and said, 'Your Honor, I just want to clarify. I did approach Mr. Fisher, and I didn't know he was a member of the grand jury, or was this going to be a problem?' And then I found out, and I left. And then I guess after I left, she said, 'You keep pushing me, I'm going to yank your badge, see what happens,' to Steinfeld." And so I don't know. It was very bizarre. She clearly told me that I would never be called as a witness. She's like, it was used as a method to jam me up. So she thought I wouldn't know my rights, and I wouldn't talk to the press. And so but anyway, that's kind of what went down, just to clarify it, and
Wow. Well, that was a pretty detailed account. The Silver Fox has entered the building. Josh Ritter, host of Courtroom Confidential, former LA Prosecutor of the Year, knows Beth Silverman, and a criminal defense attorney. Josh Ritter, you missed the beginning of the story, but the bottom line is Steve Fisher, who, at one point, his client is the mansion owner. And we find out that subsequently he was a witness in the for the grand jury, but he shows up in court today, and Beth Silverman throws a conniption, goes ballistic on him and Patrick Steinfeld, the attorney for Celeste Rivas Hernandez. What is happening here? Beth Silverman sounds like she is scary individual. What do you read between the lines?
I mean, that's it. In between the lines, she's a scary individual. She's no one to mess around with. I've known her for 20-something years. She's as hard as they come, and that's why she's got a case like this. I don't know the circumstances. I read a little bit about Steve, what happened with you earlier. It was earlier today, right?
Yeah.
I read some article online about it a little bit. I mean, I don't know the particulars, and I don't know why it was so upsetting to Beth, obviously, but I do know that usually they have motions to exclude people who have been, witnesses either in the grand jury or potentially at any point. I don't know if that's what got her so triggered about the whole thing, but I will say, dealing with a death penalty case with the kind of media scrutiny that this one is under, you can understand why probably tensions are running high, and why she might be, just especially sensitive to what she may feel is, I don't know. I don't know if she felt it was inappropriate or if she's just trying to safeguard her case and make sure that nothing happens that can later on be pointed at and say, this was inappropriate. But, just based on what you're telling us, that is what I'm gathering from the whole thing. Sorry, I'm late, by the way.
And I can understand that. The one thing that I didn't appreciate from her was that she said in front of the press pool that I had broken the law and there was a warrant out for my arrest because of it. And that's not true. The bailiff came up to me as he's walking out. He's like, there's no warrant for it. So, stuff like that, the press is going to believe her. She's the deputy DA. And I think things like that are inappropriate. She said, that because I illegally violated the secrecy of the grand jury. I have not bound any, the secrecy that the grand jurors are, and I didn't disclose it anyways. But anyway, it's not I don't want to take away from it's Celeste's. It's the beginning of justice for Celeste, and that's why I just laughed. I said, Your Honor, I understand. I'm out. So I do. Listen, as long as that courtroom is still operating and it's the wheels of justice are turning, I'm completely happy.
Well, when she said, "I'm going to pull your badge," was she talking to the attorney or to you?
The attorney, because he's got a DA a badge meeting to get into the DA's got a certain amount of seats in the courtroom, and he's there with Celeste's family. So he threatened to pull. She said, you keep pressing me. This is according to the reporters at Fox News that said that you keep pressing me, you see what happens. I'll pull your badge.
She sounds nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. She sounds like a lot of fun. That's probably it's the guy that spoke on her behalf is probably correct. It's a very high risk
Who spoke on
case.
her behalf?
The one guy with the white hair that
Josh
knows
Ritter.
her.
He
Yeah.
said very specifically that he wasn't speaking on her behalf.
What I meant was the person who spoke to her perspective.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're both prosecutors in the same office. Like they know each other. So he could
Right.
speak
And
as to why she might do that. But
what he was saying, I give credibility to. It's a high profile case. And so there's a lot of tension, I'm sure. There's a lot of stress about it. And I can understand being really
she doesn't
stressed
want
out.
anything to mess up her case.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she took it out on the wrong guy. Don't take it out on the private eye guy. Like he's just doing his thing. He's not trying to hurt anybody.
Yeah. He seems like a good private eye too.
Seems like a nice guy.
But he does like to go on YouTube shows.
Well, I mean, can you blame him?
Or no, I don't blame him. I would do the same thing.
Exactly.
Anyway, I am ready to terminate